Welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. In this episode, I'm joined by Chris Shields. Chris is the Global Head of L&D for the nGAGE Group. And in this episode, he talks about some of the learnings from training over 5,000 recruiters. He delves into the skill gap for new starters to the industry, how they accelerate the performance of their highest performers. And there's lots of learnings, whether you're a small to medium-sized organisation or whether you're a much bigger business. There'll be things that you can take away and apply in your world. Chris, welcome to Amplifying Recruitment.
Thank you for having me.
No, thanks for joining us. So we're at beautiful Prince's golf course today, which is a bit of a change of scenery. So for anyone that doesn't know you, will you give us a bit of an intro to you?
Yeah, so I'm the Global Head of Talent Development at nGAGE Talent. And I've spent probably best part of nearly, I'm coming into my 20th year now in recruitment in total. So I was 16 years at Hayes, and then I've spent nearly the last 4 years with nGAGE Talent.
Cool, nice. And so I suppose the first thing I'm kind of interested in then really is like, how do you make that step from recruiter to, because you're a decent recruiter in your own right.
Yeah.
What spurred that step from recruiter to trainer?
It's I would say it would be a microcosm of recruitment. I fell into it more than anything, if I'm being honest. I'd spent, I think, probably my first 5-6 years or so working in a smallish office, billing manager role. And, I was middle 20s at the time, and I just harbored ambitions to kind of, work in a big city. You know which part of the world I come from, in the West Midlands, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to get into kind of into one of the big cities with my old employer. And I'd gone through management training. I enjoyed it. And I, at the end of it, I just asked the question if they, would be interested in having anybody else join their team. And a few months further down the line, I got a phone call if I was still interested, and it opened up a world of work and insight and learning and intrigue that I'd never seen before, because I'd recruited for 6 years, running the same office, managing the same team, and it gave me something and gave me an opportunity to explore UK and Ireland and Europe like I'd never had the opportunity before. So yeah, I was, like I said, I totally fell into it, but I definitely grasped it with both hands.
Never looked back?
I haven't, no.
Amazing. So it's a big question. I don't know if you know the answer to this. How many people have you trained? Because I think of like Hayes is an absolute monster.
Yeah.
nGAGE, you've got well over 1,000 staff.
Yeah.
How many people have you trained?
I think it would be probably north of maybe 5,000 if I really had to. I know it sounds ridiculous when you say that, and obviously I'm so young still. So, but yeah, I say it could be north of 5,000 actually. And Hayes was a great place. I brilliant 16 years there, both, like I say, from a recruitment perspective, recruiting and managing, all the way through to the training aspect and heading up the training team for the whole of the North for Hayes as well in one of my last roles, or in my last role. But when I look at the actual sheer volume, they've got 5,000 people. Well, the height of when I was there, they had 5,000 people at any one time, and I was doing national training at some parts. I was doing regional training. I'd done, new starter training, for, 2 big stints. I spent nearly 4 or 5 years being a national trainer for the central training team, all the way through to heading up the training team for the North, Northwest, Yorkshire, Scotland, Ireland. So yeah, I reckon it could be 5,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of lives that you've touched there. So what's been the biggest change that you've seen? In fact, let me ask a better question than that. What's the biggest change that you've seen pre-COVID to post-COVID? Because we still have this like almost line in the sand, I think, of
Yeah.
post-COVID, don't we? But we're well past that now.
Yeah,
And I think maybe we can make a fairer assessment of what was training like or L&D like pre-COVID versus post-COVID. What's changed?
I think there's probably three things that spring to mind for me. I think firstly, recruitment delivery models have changed quite significantly in the world that I see, in the fact that, 6-7 years ago, you either were a 360 recruiter or you didn't work in recruitment. And that was that was how I viewed, excuse me, and that's how I viewed, and that's how all I knew and saw from a recruitment perspective. You were a full 360 recruiter. Whereas, I look today, and particularly at our business, and nGAGE, we're a private equity backed business that through acquisitions and equity investment, we provide business infrastructure and a business platform for, small brands and small recruitment businesses to grow and thrive. What that actually means is, we're the central function that allows a small business, a small brand to have marketing and HR and legal counsel and payroll and actually senior leadership support and ultimately kind of training. And what I've noticed, particularly since I've been with nGAGE, is, and other businesses, again, the old place, Hayes, have moved towards this, is recruitment's moved towards more 180. And even, like I say, we've got a number of brands within our group that are down to 120 recruitment models. So the delivery model of the job of what people do, I think, has changed quite significantly in that regards. I think technology, of course, you can't go through a 18-month spell in pretty much most walks of life without seeing a change in technology. In some way for the good, for the better. I'm sure we'll come on to that a little bit later. And just actually people's, the delivery of training. Again, COVID was a fairly line in the sand for working from home and, the world of Zoom and Teams and so on and so forth. But actually, I think, again, some of the, there's positives and negatives with everything. I think some of the real positives that come out of that of, we can deliver training online, or I believe I can deliver, and I believe my team can deliver high quality, good high quality training to more people. I spent a couple of weeks ago, I was online with Australia at 5:30 a.m. I was online delivering some training at 9 a.m. And then I was online at about 1:30 to the US. So I had Australia, UK and the US all by the time that I'd had kind of let me lunch settle, really. Now that's just not that was never feasible before COVID. So I think that's some of the real changes over the last few years.
What about then, so staying on that same thing of how training's changed, and I can reflect back on my call it training or lack of, or but how like training was delivered to new starters in recruitment, maybe pre-COVID or even further back than that.
Yeah.
How's that changed? How have you seen, and maybe that ties into what people expect from work, what they expect from an employer, what they expect training to look like. How's that changed?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that people's appetite to, and I class not just new starters, with all due respect, we kind of tell them what they need to know and what they need to do early on. But experienced recruiters, managers up to senior management, I think there's probably less of an appetite to be sat in a boardroom from maybe 9 till 6, 9 till 5, doing all of your training in that regards, because there absolutely is there is a home, and I hopefully in my training lifetime there'll always remain a home for boardroom training, classroom training, as some will call it. Why? Because it's the environment, it's the thoughts, it's the ideas, it's bringing a peer group together and talking about challenges or upskilling, you know, on behavioural or soft skills. And I hope that's never lost. But like I said, I feel that people's appetite, because of the world of training moving online, it can be a little bit shorter. You know, micro learning is a big part of how people kind of digest training today.
Have you got an idea of what the ideal like new starter training looks like?
Blended learning. In terms of, I think there's an element of, there's some training they have to, you know, figure out and do on their own. There's some training that will be instructor led, again, online, and you know, a mix of blended learning, again, in a classroom or boardroom as well. Again, why? Because it brings a peer group together, and I think that when you've got the opportunity to sit in front of somebody, again, from a podcast perspective, you know, you ask any podcaster, they would absolutely bite your hand off to be able to interview people face to face. Why? Because you get so much more, there's so much more depth and so on and so forth than you might be able to get online. And like I said, I think that would probably be the same with new starters, that a mix of, you know, online training, online like learning, micro learning, again, you know, maybe compliance, but again, the hard, you know, the introduction to some of the key fundamentals of recruitment, sales, for example, all the way through to, like I say, doing an element of classroom training, an element of bringing a peer group together.
If there's someone listening to this and they're not part of a 1,000-person business, they don't have the luxury of a training team to lean on. So let's just imagine this person's got a 10-person recruitment business and they're onboarding new starters. What would your advice be to them to, what's the best way to induct, onboard and train those people in maybe the first like 4 weeks? What would that look like?
I think in my experience, the best recruiters have always learned by osmosis. And again, in you know, I know a number of businesses within our group that have, you know, I've moved away from, for example, you know, full-time hours in the office. And I think that does have a kind of an impact on somebody's learning. You know, when I started in recruitment, it was December 2006, and I was working in an office for Hayes in Stoke, and I had my manager as far away from me as I am to you for 50 hours of the week. And I had my senior consultant as far away from me to there, and, you know, another highly experienced business manager, you know, another 2 feet away. So I spent, you know, I was very fortunate, from the great that I had around me in that regard, but I learned so much from the osmosis of being in and around, you know, great people, great recruiters. And I think that's absolutely critical, that if you are to increase speed to competency, there needs to be learning by seeing, hearing, looking, watching, you know, failing, but actually seeing somebody else do it as well.
Okay.
So like I say, for those first 4 weeks, really have somebody close to you.
Okay. And what else? What else are the other? And I completely agree with you, by the way. Like I reflect back. I think most of what I learned early on in recruitment was osmosis, overhearing someone else say something, going, "Oh, yeah, that's cool. I'm going to use that." And sometimes the reverse of that as well, going, "Oh my gosh, that's horrendous. I'm not doing that."
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I think like I'm a firm believer in that. What else for you is important in those early stages?
I think these first parts are probably a little bit harder to really kind of nail on, but I think if I've got somebody that new that's starting with me, I think they need to understand how to be authentic. I think one of the most important traits, and I think we could probably go down a hell of a rabbit hole around what actually being authentic actually means and looks like. But I think that's absolutely should be the backbone of anybody. I personally be interviewing and doing skills-based and competency-based interviews on authenticity. If I was going to pick one, it would be that, because you can work with somebody that's quite genuine and authentic. But I think, and we use a phrase in our business, and it's something that is a consistent undertone of what we talk about, and it's doing less better. And what that means is there's a lot of noise in recruitment. There's a lot of background. There's lots of things to do, loads of plates to spin. There's always, you can before you know it, spend 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and not pick up the phone and not speak to a client, not even speak to a candidate. And you can get really busy, and you can spend 3 days not speaking to one candidate or one client at times. A week can just go, a day can just go. And one of the things I absolutely believe in is the phrase, like I say, we use is just doing less, but doing things better. For example, if you were a new starter taking over somebody's business, I've come in, and I'm taking over Jamie Burrows, moved on, running another team. It would be fairly smart to spend the first 4 weeks speaking to all the clients that Jamie worked with, and all the clients that Jamie met, and all the clients that Jamie interviewed with, and all the clients that Jamie got jobs in. So when I say doing less better, there's loads of things you can get a new starter to do, but why don't we just get them doing 3 or 4 really good things? For example, speaking to some really good clients of the individual you've taken over the desk from. Why don't we get them speaking to, I don't know, the 2 or 3 real key job titles that they recruit for? Okay, might be finance, okay, qualified accountant, it might be purchase ledger and, payroll, okay? Why don't we just get them to spend the first 3 or 4 weeks just speaking to those 3 real core candidates? You do that and work with those candidates and talk about getting referrals for those candidates. And some of those candidates that Jamie placed over the last 2 years, 3 years, that individual is going to do a lot less work, but what they do is a lot better. It's cliched, but it's the working smart, not just working hard, which we're very good at working hard in recruitment. We're brilliant at it. We're not so always clever and box as clever as we should do around how we actually work smart.
Okay, I like that. I really like that, especially in the early stages of someone's career. I think there's a lot of sense in that. Is there and I risk asking you to generalise enormously here, is there a common skill gap that you see for new starters?
Skill gap I would say on the whole, business development. Again, I'm probably not reinventing the wheel here with this, but I think, again, not that COVID is the be all and end all in terms of history, but I would say from a perspective of the last 4 or 5 years or so since then, I think business development as a whole is probably quite an underutilized skill in terms of what's been developed. Why? From a general recruitment perspective, we had quite a post-COVID boom that meant there was quite a lot of, more jobs, less candidates. It becomes less business development folk, because business development is a skill. It's like playing golf. You don't pick up a golf club for a year. You don't pick up a golf club for 6 months. You ain't going to be great. Business development's the same. You don't do proper business development or some new business development. You don't do that for 3, 6, 9, 12 months. You ain't going to be very good at it. That's not saying you can't get back there. It's just you're not going to be as polished and refined, as clinical, as smart, and there's a real art to it. Business development is an art, not a structured science. It is a bit of an art. It's conversational. It's moving a client from thinking, oh hello, this is a sales call, to actually I can talk to this person.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we're talking about new starters, but actually recruiters more generally, this is definitely a theme, right? So in fact, let's stick with that then. So post-COVID boom, everyone made loads of money. Had another guest on here describe it as Disneyland recruitment. And that was fantastic. And then we hit this slump where maybe people had lost the muscle memory of business development and needed to get back doing some things that they used to do.
Yeah.
What have you guys done? And I get that this will be different for different brands, but you've got 1,000 people or over 1,000 people that have maybe lost that muscle memory. What have you done internally as a training team to help people get back to that habit of developing business?
Yeah, look, we've made sure that, for example, business development has been, absolutely top of, our priority. It's what we do in terms of, the masterclasses that we run across the group. We've got business development that's aimed at kind of different levels. And what I mean by that is, we've got business development, a business development workshop that's, for, what I'd say is our, fairly new starter type cohorts, which is a development for them. We've got what we call an advanced sales business development, more experienced hires, learn about some of the more subtle arts of selling. And we've made sure that we're talking to, I spend a lot of time talking to our business and brand leaders, a lot of my time, and we're making sure that business development is on the agenda of their agendas, that, it isn't just on a training team. It's not just on, one person, 2, 3, or a team of 4 people, that it's a collective agreement that we kind of need to raise the bar. We've got a lot of account managers within the brands of our groups, and account managers. The phrase account manager has historically been, you've got a client or a group of clients that are, fairly warm and friendly, and know you, and some use you more than others, but that's fine. But actually, the role of an account manager is still a business development role. It is still, an expanding of contacts. It's still an expanding of organisations where you see fit. And again, sometimes I don't always think that, we certainly weren't quick off the mark with kind of realising, we might have a population here of account managers within our group that aren't as sharp in their skills. They're experienced recruiters. That's what the role of an account manager is, experienced recruiters. But actually, that job there is a business development focused job, and it's through regularly talking to not just the people at the top of our business and brands, but it's talking to the senior management teams that we've identified where we've got weaknesses. And I do business development sessions and use some of the best fee earners in our group. Why? Because it isn't just about my learnings and the way I've done business development. The way I learned to do business development was I watched 3 or 4 people do it.
I think it's really interesting, like a couple of things that you said there. One of them being about the account managers, and I agree with that. I see that a lot of account managers sitting on accounts and managing those accounts, and that's one thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's something very different and far more impactful across your business if you've got people that expand accounts and they can smell a lead and they can chase it down, and then maybe they pass that on to someone else that's got a slightly different skill set.
Yeah.
But just being on it, I suppose, and having that business development mindset. We call it,
I've heard the phrase turning hunters into gatherers before. We use do you want to be a chicken or a fox? And it is, it's that sort of phraseology. It's that sort of kind of mindset that, like I said, we want to push, and we want to, not just encourage people, but we want to create a culture in our, across the whole of our group that everybody sells. You watch anything with our CEO, Tim Cook, and at some point in that, there will be a phrase of everybody sells, from him down to, our CEO, Adam, Lou, our group HRD, down to myself. I go out and meet clients. I don't do a lot of it, but I've been out and met customers. And I think that sort of culture does help when there is an expectation that sales shouldn't be a dirty word. It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
We should be. I'm proud I've worked in recruitment, You know, I don't want to work in any other sector or industry. You know, I love recruitment. I've done it for nearly 20 years. I'm proud of what we do. And I think that understanding that recruitment is a sales job, and that's fine. That's, you know, that's absolutely fine. And it is a sales job. In order to do that job, then you need to have an element of selling about what you do. You know, you need to understand the art of it.
Yeah. The other thing that really interested me in something you just said was how you bring the bigger sort of fee earners, the more successful people across the group.
Yeah.
You bring them and you involve them as some of the, maybe, I don't know if it's the delivery or you get them to use examples as well. So it's not just you telling your stories, right?
Yeah.
So how does that work?
Yeah, so we, again, let me give you an example. For some of our new starter training, what we call our Develop an Expert program. Okay, so our Develop an Expert program is something that we run for our new starters, okay, usually within their first 6 weeks. And as part of that, one of the modules of it is around business development. And, you know, we've got a program that looks at, again, things that, you know, not reinventing the wheel here, around being able to sell a candidate and take a good candidate to market, and the art of, you know, flipping a business development conversation or business development sales call actually just into a business conversation, and being able to talk about a good candidate. And within that, we bring, like I say, I use, you know, if I'm doing this face to face in our London office, there's always one or two people happily, there's, in our London office, you've got more than a few, I'll happily just jump straight into the room with you. But but yeah, we always want to lean on, like I say, that, you know, learn from the best. You know, if you're going to learn anything, you know, learn from the best in the business, sort of thing, you know. And that's why I feel it's really important in what we do that we've got some of the best in our business, you know, showing, teaching, mentoring, coaching, and delivering in some part training.
I'm going to go back to a similar question I asked earlier. Because there'll be people listening to this going, well, that's amazing, but I don't have 1,100 people to lean on. If you're a 6, 8, 10, 12, 20 person business, how do you integrate some of the things you're talking about? How do you integrate, or how would you integrate that if you was advising someone that had a smaller recruitment business?
I would, again, I think if you're running a small recruitment business, you've probably done quite well yourself in business development. Like, again, I've never run a small recruitment, you know, business. I've worked, like I say, there's a number of 10, you know, there's a number of businesses in our brand that have probably got 15 to 20 people or less in them. Like I say, they've got the central function of us. But actually, if you're running a small business of recruiters, and you might not necessarily, you know, be naturally obliged in terms of training, for example, but you've got to where you are from being good at sales. You can't build a recruitment business and not be good at sales and be good at business development and be good at building a relationship, you know, and getting customers to love you. And I don't mean love as in, you know, let's marry sort of thing. I mean, you know, if somebody loves you, if they're gone, you miss them. And it should be, that's the sort of relationship that you want with customers in recruitment. If Jamie Burrows, the recruiter, goes, I want to be, you know, if I'm a good customer of yours, I want to feel that's a blow to me. So I think the business owners, people that are running, you know, very small teams should have the confidence that they've got to where they are. You know, what worked for them. Like I say, the real art of business development hasn't changed, I don't believe, in much of the time since, you know, I started. The technology I use has changed. The communication strategies and multi-channel social media, you know, postings, that's changed in 20 years. But the real art of talking to a client or a prospective client, I don't think it's changed that much. Why? Because I think you've got to be genuine, you've got to be authentic, and you've got to be quite honest and candid.
So is that a case then, if that person's listening, and you're absolutely right. I think if you've got a 12-person recruitment business,
yeah,
I would suggest there's some fairly decent evidence that you were very, very good at recruitment yourself.
Yeah.
So that whole thing of success leaves clues, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think the challenge for lots of people is decoding that and going, well, what is it I do? How do I teach that to someone else?
Yeah. Again, I think we're all right to say this. We've worked together. You've worked with others of business. If you haven't got and again, nGAGE again, probably a prime example of this. We run really lean. Like nGAGE, we're a really, tight, lean business. There's not a lot of fat on us, in terms of the numbers in central services, HR, marketing, payroll, legal, all of the central services. We run really lean. So when we need additional, when we need additional support, additional functions, additional specialty knowledge, we bring it in. So if I was running, I know for a fact that if I was running a small recruitment business and maybe didn't have a training background or a development background, which I think probably most people would to an extent, I would absolutely bring in somebody.
Yeah.
I would bring in a Jamie Burrows. I'm not just saying that because you're on your podcast. I'm not. I would bring somebody that could come in and give me a structured working plan. You could come in and give a structured training plan. You could deliver part of it, but you could also work with a small business owner or anybody that does, training and L&D in that regard. They could come in and provide that support. That doesn't mean that you're going to go and work with them directly, work with them full time. That doesn't mean that they're going to need somebody delivering training necessarily full time. But the bringing in that expertise, I think, is absolutely key.
Obviously, I agree.
Shock.
Yeah. Something else you said there. So you've got businesses within the group that are 15 heads.
Yeah.
And you've obviously got some brands that are well over 100 heads as well. How on earth do you differentiate the training there? Or like it's for you, and like you said, you're quite a lean team, right? Of L&D there. So how do you differentiate across those different businesses? But not only that, it's the different markets, it's the different delivery models that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, it's not always easy. I think there's probably some businesses in our group that probably don't think they get enough love and attention from myself and my training team. But look, again, I think I personally can't be a specialist in every industry. Okay, I can't be. I've recruited in construction. I've personally recruited in finance. I've personally recruited in social care, and there's one other that's just escaped my mind, but it was albeit briefly. So I've got an idea of having hands-on experience of recruiting in a specific sector. But at nGAGE, we've got businesses in, obviously we've got UK business, we've got Europe businesses, we've got businesses in the USA, we've got a small business in Australia, we've got a central offshore resourcing team and business now in South Africa. We've got an offshore team in India. So you're right, there is a lot going on in that regards, but essentially a lot of, I would say 75% of the group, we have got people that are doing the job of resourcing candidates, that area of what they do. We've got people that are account and relationship managers and the nuances of that. We've got people that, are purely business development and sales focused to bring on. So we do a lot of offering to those delivery models as a whole. And then what we do to complement that is we do then work and build kind of specialist programs for each of our businesses as and when they kind of need. And we, like I've learned to say, it took me a long time in recruitment to learn the word no. I had to learn the word no in this job with nGAGE really quickly, because we've got nearly 20 plus different brands and businesses that all want things their own way, all different, done in their own way with a different style and a nuance to it. And it would have been really easy for me to go, yes, and then go, oh shit, what do we do now? I've overpromised. Classic recruiter trait. I've said yes, I've overpromised, and no. So we're very selective in kind of our projects that we take on, where we build, and deliver training programs specifically to one of our businesses in a specific sector or specific geographical. Like I say, I'm doing a bit of work with our IT business in the USA at the moment, which is again quite a niche market at the moment.
Cool. So it's just so I'm clear on it, there's some like generalised training for different areas.
Bit multi-leveled, yeah, in that regard.
And then you'll drill down and go, right, do you know what? One of our finance businesses needs this, and we'll put something together.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, we've got to be a little bit selective on what we can do in that regards in terms of taking on. But yeah, so it's multi-leveled in that regards.
Yeah. I won't go into the politics of how you decide who you're going to work
with. No.
We'll come back to that another time. Or maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll tell you that later.
Something else you mentioned that I'd like to know more about. So you said technology's changed a lot since you've been in recruitment, delivering training. Like, where does technology play its part in your delivery? Whether that's like an LMS system or the hybrid sort of blended learning. Like, just talk me through that. What does that look like?
Yeah, so we use an LMS platform, and that gives us the capabilities to create our own, content and training. I also think that it allows us to, it's getting to a stage where it's allowing us to automation, and not necessarily AI, but it's allowing us to streamline and automate a lot of the back office talent development functions, which I think is an absolute positive tick. That's exactly what you want from maybe AI in the future, but actually automation at the moment. A lot of the mundane, monotonous, process-driven sort of tasks, can get taken away. And yeah, like, look, what I think we've spoke about this off camera before, but where I see technology moving is, I believe at the moment, there's LMSs out there for not just recruitment, but there's LMSs that I think technology-wise they look brilliantly. The user friendliness of the back office, like people like myself who aren't particularly, I'm not taking a stack or a DevOps job anytime soon. The basics of the back office functions of some LMSs are really simple to use. You can literally plug in, into your HR system, download all your, everybody who works from the business top to bottom, and start assigning kind of training and grouping and some really quick, fancy things that's so easy to do. The downside of that, though, is I don't think, in my experience, the actual quality of the content is where it needs to be. Like I say, let me give you an example. So I've seen and worked in demonstration or had most LMSs, over the years, and I think that they, you look at from a HR perspective. So, excuse me, you've got Workday. We use Ceridian Dayforce. These are global HR, shared service center systems and platforms, and they are absolutely at the very cutting edge of kind of HR technology. And we look at the training LMSs that sometimes again we've spoken about, and they look and feel like the technology is absolutely there in both the front end and the back end. But then when you start getting under the surface of the actual content of what's in there, the business development content, the industry sector knowledge content, it's not where it needs to be. And that's, I think, one of the big things holding back people really investing a lot of money in LMSs at the moment. So
should people just be creating their own, whether they use someone else's platform, but actually having training that's
absolutely, yeah. I think that's that's what we're moving into, that space now, where we're creating or going to be creating very soon our own learning platforms, and using our own content to the other thing you said, again going back, what's changed, the way people digest information, we live in such a time of instant gratification. We live in a time of, there's a mobile phone, you whatever you want, you got it here and now. You need it here and now. And I think that learning can be like that if it's good enough. If training and learning, if it's good enough and people can learn on the go, people can learn. If you can learn something in 5 minutes and it not take 55 minutes, you'd learn it in 5 minutes, but it needs to be of good quality. So, like I say, I think the way people digest and take on information, I think, is changing. And I think people's attention spans are changing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that,
how many people read a newspaper front to back anymore? Who reads a newspaper at times?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's a lot to be said for what you're saying there, of that I'm about to do a negotiation call with a client.
Yeah.
Where's that 3-minute video that I can watch that maybe isn't going to give me all the skills I need,
No.
but might just be a refresher on, a reminder on the structure of that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, something that can give you some structure and can give you some direction. Most of all, can it give you a starting point, a checkpoint in the middle, and can give you, that's what's kind of what you're aiming for at the end. If you can, where's your start, where's your kind of checkpoint halfway through that you're on the right way, stay on the tracks, and where's your end goal. If that's what micro learning or content can do for you, that's kind of all it might need to give you.
Yeah, and I actually believe that can be implemented in any business of any size, given
it's totally scalable.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think as long as you've got successful people in the business, and a bit like you said, bring in some big billers and some different types of people delivering mini segments of content, you can be that 10-person recruitment business with your own little internal platform. Chris, last question from me before we head out onto this wonderful golf course. What do you think's in store, like in the next 12 months? What do you think? What do you think's in store for the recruitment industry?
Recruitment industry. I always my little bit of, I suppose I've got a little bit of a fear that a lot of our businesses, a lot of recruiters that I work with, and same as you, recruitment's moving a lot towards centralized recruitment functions, neutral vendors, portal-led recruitment. And every time I feel that, we might be turning the corner in recruitment with, more customers are moving to that neutral vendor, that portal-led recruitment. And I don't always feel it lends itself to kind of specialist recruitment. I absolutely get why. We've got to, by the way, we as a recruitment industry we've got to lean into this, because I don't think it's going anywhere. We've got to, an RPO business, an MSP, a master or neutral vendor. You've got to partner with them. But I just feel that it might make us lose the real art of recruitment, providing really specialists, niche candidates, and being able to talk and interact with clients, because there's so much of it at the moment is quite, is moving towards, like I say, neutral and portal-led recruitment. So I hope it doesn't continue at maybe the rate it is. But that still doesn't mean that there isn't businesses out there, and that tends to be a little bit more for your larger businesses. And there'll still absolutely be a market for why large businesses of 2,500 people plus use portals and use neutral vendors as the way they recruit. But there'll always be an SME market, and that's interesting. The SME recruitment market for me is what really interests me. I can talk to you can talk to a hiring manager and have some real influence. So that's the good thing about this.
Brilliant. Chris, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.